I think you have to look at the risk that you're considering and ask yourself, what happens if I do nothing different? Because we always think that, staying right where I am is safe. But staying where you are is an illusion. There's no such thing as that anyway. If you stay static and you do nothing different, life is going to move on without you, and you're going to fall off the conveyor belt one way or another. You're going to be uncomfortable one way or the other. I would rather control my discomfort and run into the fire than just sit here and just wait for discomfort to fall upon me and to happen to me, right? And all of us who just lived through COVID, 6 years ago, know what it's like to have a really uncomfortable situation just kind of fall onto us when we were just minding our own damn business and going about our lives, right? Hey everybody, welcome to Delusional. I'm your host, Michelle Coyle, and I am here with Allison Hare, and we are turning the tables a little bit today. Allison, by the way, is a podcast strategist and the host of the award-winning podcast Culture Changers, which is now in its 7th year. So congrats, Allison, on your amazing success. And you decided that you wanted to interview me for today's podcast. Is that right?
Yes. So here's why. Michelle, when I was listening to your podcast episode, and I hear so much, I know you personally. And when I was listening to your podcast, I'm like, we need more Michelle. We need more Michelle in there. And I wondered how many new listeners knew your story or understood where you came from. Because when I speak to you, my goodness, you have lived 1,000 lifetimes. You are wise beyond wise. And to have this is almost like a sixth sense, it probably is truly a sixth sense on business, on people, on emotions, and like tying it all together in a really powerful way. And I said, Michelle, can I interview you on your own show? And here we are.
And I said, okay. That sounds fun. And it's probably true. I do try to showcase my guests when I'm interviewing them. And, sometimes I talk about myself a little bit, but I am a little self-conscious or cognizant of not taking up too much airspace because I want to feature the guests that I'm having. So this is probably good. If anybody wants to know more about me or my story, I'm a pretty open book. So what do you want to know, Allison?
So why don't we start a little bit from the beginning? If you talk about a little bit about your life/career arc as it stands today.
I'm going to try not to be like overly boring because I'm 45 and I feel like I could drone on for like a year on when I was a child. So I'll try to give you the highlights and then, stop me and ask me if you want to know anything more about what I'm saying. But I was born in Lawton, Oklahoma to two military veteran parents. Almost everyone in Lawton is either in the military or a veteran of the military. It's an Army town. It is next to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is the infantry training base for the United States Army and other branches of the military sometimes. And so I grew up with my windows being rattled constantly from artillery, and to the point where it would, thunder later in life. There'd be like a thunderstorm and I wouldn't even hear it. And people would be like, oh, is there, obviously there's thunder going on. And I was like, what? Like I started to delete that. So that's where I grew up. And it was a weird, interesting place to grow up, Allison, because it is very racially diverse, but very culturally homogenous, Army culture, Army people. And there wasn't a huge socioeconomic divide where I grew up. Like nobody had tons of money. The richest people in town were like the dentist. Like if you had a 2-story house, I thought you were very rich.
Yeah, ballers.
But most of it, so I didn't grow up with a lot of money, but neither did anyone else around me. And so I don't have that same kind of trauma that some other people have with that, where they're like, oh, everyone else was driving a Maserati to school. And, it wasn't like that. It was like we were all kind of in that working class socioeconomic strata. And my relationships with the people from Lawton, Oklahoma are some of the best relationships in my life to this day. Like there's a whole contingent of folks from Lawton that cheer on everything I do. There's people that listen to this podcast. Hey, Lawtonians that are listening. And I love and appreciate where I came from now in a way that I certainly did not appreciate it when I was growing up.
So tell me about, you have this military background. You had kind of a homogenous, I can't help but think of like communistic type of thing where everybody kind of had the same thing. But you go into a career serving political consultants. I didn't even know that was a thing of like I understand being a politician, but you are a business coach for like you've done this for like 20 years. Tell me
Yeah,
about
I made up a whole new job that didn't exist, and that's why I still have it. I think I have no competition because nobody else
hello,
knew that.
Delusional. Let's do this. Go back to the beginning. How did this come up?
Yeah, there's some steps in the middle of that, but like I always enjoyed elections. I didn't realize that I was starting like a career trend at the time, but even in high school, I was on the student council and I ran the elections and like counted the ballots and made sure. Again, I did not realize this was the base for anything. When I went to college, I bumped around different majors like a lot of people do until I found political science and was just like, this is what's interesting to me. My parents, to their credit, were always very much like, yeah, study what you want to study, do what's interesting to you. I mean, I was there on a full scholarship. It wasn't like, I did not have that situation that some people have where it's like their parents are paying for college. And so they're like, hey, you have to be an engineer or a doctor or whatever because we're paying for it. So like nobody was paying for it. I got a scholarship. I was there. They were like, yeah, we're proud of you. We love you. Do whatever you want. I fell into political science just because I found it the most interesting. I have ADHD and struggle to do things that aren't particularly interesting to me. So
Mm-hmm.
when I found something and I started reading political philosophy and these kinds of things, I was like, all right, cool, I'm into this. And I was running campaigns on campus too. So I never wanted to run myself to be like student body president, but I loved running the campaigns. And my
That is
professors
so
would get so mad
wild.
at me because I would like tank my grades because I would spend 2 weeks doing nothing but getting somebody else elected to, be student body president.
Wow.
And they're like, you haven't turned anything in 2 weeks. I'm like, I was on the campaign, it's campaign work is a rush like no other. And we can get into like all where that all went. But like, there is nothing like working on campaigns. It is like the professional version of capture the flag. It is really fun. It is really intense. It's really hardcore. You feel important. We can debate whether you actually are important or not, but you feel like you're doing something that matters. And it gets very addictive. So there weren't a lot of other jobs that were going to give me what working on campaigns gave me. And that's why when I finished college, I had come out to DC to intern in my senior year. I had made some connections in DC. And when I finished college, I went right back into the campaign world and into the field.
I'm thinking about, first of all, I remember like student elections and stuff, and I wanted nothing to do with them at all. And like understanding that political campaigns could be a rush. I just wonder. So many years ago, I live in Atlanta. And a few years ago, I had campaigned for Stacey Abrams. It was the first time I ever
Mhm.
got involved politically. And at the time, it was when Brett Kavanaugh hearings were happening. And
Mhm.
I could not explain it. I was never involved. I literally was a registered Republican my whole life. I don't know if you know that. Did you know
I
that?
did not.
I had no idea what it even meant. I was just like, yeah, fiscally responsible, a fiscally, what is it? Fiscally conservative, socially liberal, that was kind of my thing. And then once Trump got in the office and I'm like, wait, I do not stand for this at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything changed. And then Brett Kavanaugh and the hearings with Christine Blasey Ford. I remember going to sleep every night and I would cry myself to sleep because I'd be looking online and it would be another friend of mine sharing their Me Too story.
Yeah.
And I had my own that was very similar to Christine Blasey Ford.
Mm-hmm.
And I had become undone where I was like, I can't not do anything, but I don't think I want to run for office. And when I campaigned for Stacey Abrams, that felt like I was for her. It wasn't that I was opposed to whoever the opposition was. Like I bought in hook, line, and sinker. I did phone banking. I donated. And when she lost, I was crushed.
Yeah.
And that's why I want to understand what is addictive when you're on the losing end.
Well, you lose more than you win in politics, and that's something you figure out pretty quick. Around starting it. I also want to just pause and give a huge shout out to Stacey Abrams, one of my favorite politicians of all time. I also went to Atlanta to knock doors for Stacey, so I was probably knocking doors at the same time you were. And I remember the first time I ever saw her, I was at an Emily's List gala with my then husband, and they gave some kind of award. I think it was like the Rising Star Award. Forgive me, Emily's List people, if I'm getting this wrong, but there was some kind of like Rising Star in Politics award, and she got it. And she stood up and gave a speech. And I just looked at him and I was like, she's a star. Like, watch her. This is like, she's gonna be a big fucking deal. Right? Like,
Yeah.
she's got it. Whatever it is, she's got it. And yeah, I was also crushed when she lost that election, barely lost that election. So anyway, that's a whole aside. What's addictive about politics? I think when I started, it was just like, I'm a very competitive person. I don't know if you know this side of me because I've
I
mellowed
don't.
out a ton. I'm so much more chill, Allison, than I was. I've done a lot of work on myself, and I'm like, I'm not even like chill person now, but I'm relatively, comparatively, a much more chill person than I was at that time in my life. Very competitive. If you look at my astrological chart, it's like Aries everything for you astrology.
Okay. Real
I'm just
strong.
like, yeah, just, balls to the wall. Let's fucking get it. And politics is a zero sum game, or campaigns are, you either win or you lose. And I like to win. I like to win shit, and I will go hard to win. To the point where when I was younger, I would make jokes about, like, if you want to get me to do anything, you can manipulate me so easily by just telling me it's a game that I can win. And I will go and like, who can clean the house fastest or whatever. Like,
Wow.
like, you could get me to do anything by like telling me that I could win something. So that's how kind of that started. And then if you're a fucking winner, like if you're a competitive person and you're out there and you're losing, it makes you want to come back and fight harder. That's how it hit my personality, or at least my personality at the time. It is heartbreaking, by the way, because I was working on campaigns that I really believed in. So the first big loss for me was I was in the field for Dick Gephardt in 2003, and I was in Iowa, and it was freezing. And we were working insane hours. I was getting paid no money. The campaign was scrappy. Like they were asking us for donations to the campaign, even though we were barely getting paid. I mean, it was, and not because he's a bad guy, but just because like there wasn't money and we all believed in what we were doing. He is a genuinely good dude. I actually fun fact, I wrote my business school application about him, one of my essays, because it was like, what's an example of a leader? What does leadership mean to you? And I wrote a whole essay about Dick Gephardt to get into business school. And
Here's
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I told this story in the application where, it was my turn for him to come to my city, Burlington, Iowa, that I was organizing. And I had put together a big rally for him. And it was, my job was to run out to meet him walking off the bus and tell him, here's the important people that are sitting in the front row, make sure you say hi to this person and that person, and just brief him as he's walking in. And we're like in a rush, we're late, whatever. And I run out to meet him in just my sweater and jeans. And I'm trying to brief him, and he stops me. He puts his hand on my shoulder, and he's like, "Where's your coat?" And I was like, I would lay on train tracks to get this man elected.
He's concerned about your well-being.
He did. He just brought out his, like, he's got this, like, beautiful dad energy. He's a dad, like I know his kids do, like, or I did back in the day. The family man, and he brought this dad energy out. And I was just like, I was so touched, because up to then my experience in politics had been, the politician, they're the talent. They're the diva. Like, everyone else is just scrambling around making sure they've got what they need. And they're not, it's not their job to worry about anybody else. Right. So when he did that, it touched my heart in a way that I'm still talking about it 20 whatever years later. And I wrote a whole essay about it. And I was like, that's the kind of leader I want to be. I'm going to cry talking about this too. It's still emotional.
I love this. What I'm noticing about your arc and understanding you, what I think is really important for your listeners to know is that you are not afraid to go into the fire, and you don't shy away from things that are really hard. I'm curious about your business acumen, because you have said some things to me that were literally just flip, like a throwaway line that I'm like, what? Where you said that you have been working with people in this political consultant space and have, as a business leader and a business coach, that you have helped people become millionaires. Hundreds of people become millionaires from your business coaching. This is not on the front door of Delusional, right? This is not on the front door of Michelle Coyle. This is just who you are and what you've done. I'm curious about the arc of business of how you were able to kind of refine your processes of how you help people, and why this was important and interesting to you.
Yeah, I mean, I got out of business school. I went to business school trying to get out of politics, by the way, fun fact.
Okay.
You can't. It's like the
There's no
mafia.
escape.
There
They
is no
bring you
escape.
back in.
Well, that's right. And it partially is because of that addictive nature of the work, but partially it's because like the network is so strong. Like you're always going to have a job. You're always like, I never have to worry about having it. Like I could be 90 and somebody would hire me in politics to do something. Like it's a very insular thing. It's kind of hard to break into political consulting, but once you're in, like you're in. And I went to business school trying to get out of politics. I did my internship at Nestle on the Toll House brand. I gained 18 pounds in 10 weeks. Another story for another time.
I just got automatically hungry for a Crunch Bar.
I had we were doing baking, and they're not chocolate chips, by the way. They're morsels. Fun fact. I'd be eating the morsels at my.
I'm trying to figure out what's the difference between a
That's just
morsel
they're
and a
just
chip.
very serious about making sure those things are called morsels, and I think it's
Okay.
because they have like all different kinds. Like there's white chocolate, dark chocolate, caramel,
Yeah.
whatever. So they're not chocolate chip. Anyway, I was trying to understand the product we were working on, of course. So I was just fistfuls of them. Anyway, I tried to get out of politics. I graduated in 2009, like right into that recession, and people were not hiring MBAs. It was rough. There were people like moving back home with their parents out of. I mean, I went to an Ivy League business school. This is the people before us had like 10 job offers each. I mean, it was supposed to be you go here, you do this, and
Oof,
your
yeah.
ticket is written, and you were set for the rest of your life, and like that's not what happened in 2009. So I ended up back in DC, and I ended up back in politics because mama needed a job. I was a single mom at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like I had, now $140,000 worth of student loans that I had taken out because I was supposed to get some giant, MBA job or whatever. So yeah, I ended up right back here, right back in Washington, DC, and started doing, really like biz dev stuff, sales stuff. I've always kind of been tracked into that. Oh, you're pretty, you're outgoing, sales, right? And it started to become clear to me that there were other parts of the businesses that weren't working. Like, if you want me to go sell stuff, cool. Like, can we set up a marketing program that supports that? Or can we make sure that we're actually going to be able to deliver on the things that I'm selling? Can we make sure that we're operationally sound, right? So I would be the only MBA in the scenario. And I was thinking that way. And I was helping to optimize the business side of these businesses. And eventually people noticed that and started saying, hey, can you help me start my business? Can you help me fix my business? And so a little bit of that was going on. And then it was after the Hillary Trump election. That was another heartbreaker. Um, we skipped talking about how broken my heart was when Dick Gephardt lost that primary. That was the Dean Scream. If you guys remember the Dean Scream, I'm dating myself a long time ago. But it was that primary. But it is heartbreaking when you lose. And I was all in for Hillary in the 2016 election. And like a lot of women, I actually had worked for Hillary back in the day. I was an intern for her PAC. I had met her. Again, she's wonderful, awesome. She's just been a role model for me my whole life. And I was so excited. And if you recall in 2016, Allison, like we all thought she was winning. Like it was like a foregone conclusion. Of course she's winning, of course. And so it was, not only was it heartbreaking, it was like shocking and heartbreaking just to
It
bring
was.
everybody back
Yeah.
to 2016.
Bewilderment was real high.
It was horrible. And I live in a very liberal place, here in Alexandria, Virginia. So I was in the neighborhood Del Rey, which is just a liberal bastion. And I remember like the next day, I remember going to the coffee shop and the barista was crying. Like everybody's crying. Like, thank you. I'm crying. I'm getting my coffee. You know what I mean? And I went back to my office and I was like, what can I actually do? Because I know so many brilliant political strategists and I'm a good strategist, but that's not where I'm needed. But where I'm needed is all of these organizations. At the time I was working exclusively on the left. I was like, all of these organizations on the left are kind of shit shows because these are not business people, they're campaign people, and it's completely different skill set. And often it is a skill set that kind of cancels each other out, right? So if you think about campaigns, you're working really hard, really fast toward a deadline. You have this election coming up, let's say 6-8 weeks away. So you're working 100 hours a week. You're spending all the money. Like whatever's left after election day is useless. There can't be a penny in the bank account. It's useless. You can't leave like a drop of sweat on the field. You know what I mean? It's all in.
Wow.
And so when you have this mentality and that's how you're working in campaigns, and then you go and start a business, you're not thinking in the way that a business owner needs to think, that's trying to build something that's going to sustain for 10 or maybe 20 years, right? And so the way that people were managing, I'll put that in quotes, was terrible. There was no sense of financial forecasting or running the money, just operations. It was all scrappy. It's all held together with duct tape, just like we do on campaigns. Now, that's fine when you're doing something for 2 months, but it's not fine when you're doing something for 10 years. And so I saw a gap where I was actually needed and my skill set was needed. And that's when I started my first consultancy, or specifically around this, which was called BGSD. And I started that in 2016.
I am so fascinated by this because it's an angle I never even thought about, of running a campaign like a business and not, just kind of under the deadline. I had no idea that they had to spend every dollar. And it feels so wasteful as well. All that money that could be reappropriated to actually solving problems. That's another aside. I just have no idea.
I mean, to be fair to everybody, like, I don't actually know what has to happen legally to any dollars left in a campaign bank account. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I just know that, like, you're not supposed to leave money in that. I mean, like, people are donating the campaign for the campaign. That money has to be used for the campaign. So if there's money left over, I don't know, like, how they give it back or what. Like, I literally don't know. It's never been discussed.
Yeah, but I think even just working in the political world and kind of dovetailing towards the concept of being delusional, delusional for change, delusional for what does a better world look like? So regardless of if the politicians are ethical, are they a force for good? Generally speaking, I would imagine they believe, and we all, and especially people tuning into this podcast, these are people that care about making a better future. Tell me about your vision for Delusional. And do you think you are delusional? What does that mean for you? Define delusional.
I do think I'm delusional. This came up, and I did an episode with Bijal Patel, who was my brand strategist that helped me come up with this, and we talked all about it. But basically, I was telling her all of my life story, and this was kind of the common thread, was I did all this crazy shit, and like, we've skipped over a lot of it, Allison. There were some big risks that I took in my life where people said, don't do that. Like, you're insane.
What? Like what? What are some key points?
When I had an 18-month-old son, everybody said, like, don't do that. And I was, at the time, my marriage was really on the rocks. We had decided to get divorced. Everybody was really trying to get me to defer that school, stick in the marriage, try to figure it out, try to sort it out. My mom included, everybody. And that was the first time that I made what felt like a really adult decision in my life, where I said, I hear all of you, and no, I'm doing something different. Now, when I went away to school, so again, I got into Dartmouth. Again, you got to imagine, like, I'm coming from no money. I have no money at this point. I had to borrow money from my mother-in-law to even, like, apply and buy a suit and whatever. And I could afford one application. So I put in one application. It was
wow.
And I flew up there and I did my interview, and it was like a one-shot deal. It was early admission. So I figured, well, if I don't get in, I'll have time to figure out what's next, right? I got in, they said, we need a $3,000 deposit to hold your spot. I had exactly $3,000 in my 401k at that point, cashed it out, gave it to Dartmouth. They said, what else can you pay? I said, that's it. I need the rest on financial aid. I got to borrow it all. Right. Went up there to rural New Hampshire. It was my shot to get into a different area of, like, I was looking at it, and I remember saying to my husband at the time,
was that important to you? Was it a financial thing?
Because I was poor. Yeah, it was financial. I had a child. And we were not making any money, and we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment where basically we gave the bedroom to the baby, and we took the living room and put the bed and everything in the living room so that there could be some side. And it was like, and we were killing ourselves trying to make it work. DC is an expensive place to live. We were in our 20s and we were not making it. And I remember looking at him and saying, I'm seeing the trend, and the divide between rich and poor people is getting further apart. And we're on the wrong side of it. Like, one of us needs to make a jump. What are we going to do? And so I had been helping run a political consulting business at that point. And I was, like, really in love with the business side of it. And I was like, I could go to business school, and then I could get out and I could make way more money. Because at the time, I think my salary was like $40,000 or something. I was like, oh, I could be making. At the time, it was like over 100,000, which was like a huge salary. It's not now, but it was then. And I was like, okay, this is actually what I need to do to secure my kids' future, because we're not making it right now. Like, we're not going to be okay. And so I decided to do that, and I got in. And it was like, okay, this is my chance to do something different with my life. And everybody freaked out. My then husband freaked out. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about that, just out of respect for him and our son, who's now 20 and listens to this. But he basically was not going to follow his wife to New Hampshire. And he said, I'm not following my wife around and I'm not doing it. So either don't go or stay. And I said, fuck you.
Wow. Where did that
Well,
conviction come from? Why was this the path?
that relationship was not going well. Again, I don't want to get into a ton of details on it. He would admit at this point that had taken an abusive turn. We were in therapy trying to fix it. By the way, he did a lot of individual therapy afterwards, came back, apologized for all of that. Like we're so cool now. Like we're so good. I have such a great
That's
relationship
great.
with my older son's dad. So I don't want to say anything that sounds like disparaging him, but at the time we were in our 20s, we were kids. It was not going well. The relationship was abusive. I didn't want my son to see that. I didn't want him to grow up seeing that, his dad and his mom doing that. So I was getting divorced and nobody was going to tell me to stay in town at that point. I was going to go and take my break and my path to make a better life for myself and my son. And that was a really, 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 really difficult thing to do, to the point that if I had to do over again, I don't know if I could.
Wow. And I'm thinking about that convergence of delusional or expected path.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in your body where this is where you need to take this risk?
This might be the psychic stuff coming out. I don't know. I've always had a very strong gut. I think that's what makes me a great entrepreneur. Sometimes I just know. And I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's a clarity. It's an absolute clarity. And there's no part of me wants to this and part of me wants to that. It's what we call alignment, right? It's an alignment. It's like,
yeah,
this is what we're doing. And sometimes it's like, this is what's happening. I'm like, really? Yep, this is what's happening. And I have learned to trust that and to follow that, pull that thread, follow that path when I get that feeling. This is a little bit where I'm a deeply religious person, Allison. I don't know if you know that about me. I'm a religious Jew. And this is where I just trust God. I just have a lot of faith that God, the universe, whatever, is trying to tell me something, and I just need to listen.
And I think part of it is refining for the listener who is maybe considering a couple of different options right now. And I think we can get to a spot where we try and weigh out all the options and you just end up doing nothing or doing the safe thing. And so somebody who's tuning into a podcast named Delusional either has taken risks in their life or wants to take more risks. Tell me more about the world, the alternate economy of what delusional looks like for you, your belief in the world, and why this podcast even exists.
I did a solo episode last week where we talk a little bit about this, so I don't want to super rehash a ton of it. You guys can listen to the episode from last week if you want all the detail. But again, we're at this inflection point where I see the world going in a certain direction. And the shape in my mind is a K shape, right? We are at the precipice of entering something that some people call techno-feudalism, which is where we all get kind of trapped by the convenience of having every need met that we could possibly want to have met. I can DoorDash my food, I can turn on Netflix, I can get weed delivered, you know what I mean? Like anything I need, I can sit here and I can pay subscription costs for all of that. And slowly but surely, like a lobster in a pot, the economy has been shifting into this subscription model economy. So when it started with shared stuff like Airbnb and Uber, we were always like, this is great. And now it's kind of veered into, we don't get to own anything anymore. So I don't remember when you bought your phone, when you got a new phone, you bought it. You don't buy it anymore. Now you rent it from AT&T or Verizon or whoever until you're ready to turn in a new one. I don't own this thing. I'm just paying on it monthly. You can't even buy it anymore, I don't think. Maybe you can, but I'm sure there's a way. But mostly you got to rent it. Everything is going in that direction. And suddenly it's like, oh, wait a second. The one that freaked me out the other day was one of my credit cards expired and my printer ink auto renews on that credit card. And so it declined. And then my printer wouldn't print.
Wait, what?
I couldn't use
printer ink is a whole racket. That's a whole nother show.
And it's HP, you guys, whatever the fuck you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, I can't even print if my like ink subscription isn't working. I can't use the printer
Oh
that
my
I bought that's
God.
sitting in my house. Yeah. And
Big
everything is
brother.
going this way. Right. And if we allow Elon Musk and the other folks in that ilk to have their way, that's what everything is going to be like. It's going to be like, oh, yeah, all your needs are going to be provided for. You're not going to want for anything, but you're also not going to be able to like get anything. Like there's nothing, this is where capitalism gets tricky, and we call it like late stage capitalism. Because when, in the beginning of capitalism, it's like, yeah, there's opportunity. There's opportunity for somebody like me to come from here and get themselves here. If you work hard enough, if you're smart, if you try hard enough, if you're savvy. And now the system is rigged, and it's more and more and more rigged, and it's going in a more rigged direction. So either we're all going to kind of go along with that and say, okay, we're so overwhelmed by the news, we're so shut down, we're so whatever, that yeah, it's really easy to just get the weed and the DoorDash and the Netflix going, for sure. And if we do that, that is what is going to happen. We are all going to end up in like communist block apartments where
It's like
everyone's got one.
idiocracy.
Yeah, for sure. You'll have your little assigned apartment, and maybe you can have an assigned car that you rent and whatever. Like, there will be no owning anything anymore. And all the wealth just continues to flow to the top, to the top, to the top. Like that divide that I saw 20 years ago has gotten insane now. And it continues to get insane, and it's just going in that direction. Or we could do something different, right? And I saw all of my friends getting so, I call it contracted, like shut down, like overwhelmed, like upset by the news, just everything. It's just like, I don't even know what to do. I can't do anything,
Yeah.
And so if that happens, if everyone remains in that state, that's the way that goes. I'm looking at it and going, well, what is leadership? Leadership is doing something completely different than what everybody else is doing. Leadership is going first. And I'm just saying, hey, if we want something different, we have to create something different. And creating something different comes from visualizing something different first. We can't visualize something different if we're all contracted and overwhelmed and upset all the time. We actually have to be inspired and excited and engaged and empowered in order to even visualize what's different and start to think about something different. And so that's where Delusional came in. And it is a movement that we're starting. I'm bringing my political background into that. The Delusional movement is about, hey, can we get together, all of these brilliant, smart, bright, inspired, and inspiring people, and come up with something different and start to create something different, right? So my ideas are kind of seeding it, but really it's about bringing the right people together so that we can start to imagine a future that looks different instead of just resigning ourselves to this kind of techno-feudalist hellscape we're going to slide into otherwise.
I think what's interesting about that is that certainly there is an apathy. There is a level of just, you've had enough. Like, how much more can you take? And what I'm hearing are two things. One is that if there was an avenue where we could use our gifts, our gifts, our talents, our desires, and like channel the energy in a different way that feels productive, similar to in the political campaigns, you may lose more than you win. But, I had asked Shannon Watts, who is the founder of Moms Demand Action. She wrote a book called Fired Up. And I said, what do you do when you lose? And she said, you keep going. You think about women in suffrage, that there are people that fought for us way, 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 way before we were even born, till we were able to see ourselves vote. And that kind of switched something in me of being part of more of a collective. So what I'm hearing is that you are opening a channel for people to come together and use their talents. But I really want you to describe what an alternate economy is, or if you were to get people together, let's say at a table or an event, a delusional event, let's say, what would happen in there? What would be exciting and what is possible?
We start to introduce, we'll call them problems. We start to introduce challenges, and we say, how are we going to solve this? And how do we do this collectively? And let's start to get into discussion. And we might start with smaller things and start to practice that skill set. And then we might start to expand to larger things. But what I want to encourage in that is the creativity. Because right now, what happens when we go in this direction, I'll call it the bad way. when we go in the bad way, is it feels like there are fewer and fewer options. There's less and less that we can do. There's less autonomy. There's less, it's a very disempowering and disempowered stance, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk
Yeah.
about how do we get back into empowerment, we want to open up the aperture. Instead of contracted, we want to get expanded. When we're expanded, now I can see all these other possibilities, right? One of the things that I teach my entrepreneurs, because I have people come in and I try not to laugh at them when they first call me, but they say, "Oh, Michelle, I can't do this because I don't have family money like everyone else you work with." And I start laughing. I say, "Nobody calls me because they're already rich." You know, I can count on one hand the number of people I've ever worked with that had family money, and they were not. Sorry, they don't make the best entrepreneurs. They just don't have the same kind of risk tolerance that folks who grew up poor do. Um, but we teach them, okay, you can leverage money for sure. You can also leverage time. You can also leverage people. Like there's other ways to leverage. And if you don't have any money, you can leverage people and time, or you can leverage your time. That's called sweat equity and hustle. Right? If you don't have any time, you can leverage other people and you can use your money to pay people, right? Like there's different ways to do this. And we just have to figure out what it is. And it's really hard to do that when we're contracted and stressed out and like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, the sky is falling and
And by
everything's
ourselves. When the Roe v. Wade announcement came that it was probably going to be overturned, I, like many people, was just beside myself. So I put together an episode of here's some ways that you can contribute, because most people think, it's too late. I'm not going to be volunteering at Planned Parenthood. What do I even do? It feels very hopeless in some ways. And one of those things is you can contribute by, if you're a photographer, you can take pictures at an event. There's so many skills that I think we have untapped into that we don't quite know unless you're in the collective. It's, as they say, it's hard to see the label when you're in the jar. And so having the opportunity where no skill is too small, no gift is too small, no problem is too big or too small. How can we start solving them together?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's when you had explained this to me and you're like, do you really want to know what my big dream is? And I'm like, yes. And you would explain this. It is so brilliant and it is yours for the taking. It is ours for the taking. I think at this point, we need organization to be able to invite people into that. What does that look like for you, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to this kind of grassroots philosophy, which is really in my DNA from political organizing, which is, hey, yeah, real people, regular people, people like us, we have power if we band together and if we coordinate, right? Where we get fucked is when everyone gets so upset and goes and isolates, like you said, if we're by ourselves, if we're just trying to figure it out by ourselves. And then it's like, yeah, like there's no fighting the powers that be. They're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I don't think that we've crossed that threshold where it's hopeless yet, right? I think we could be getting
What
there.
makes you so sure?
Because of the things that I see around me every day that inspire me. I've talked about my local Buy Nothing group. I'm so inspired by the Buy Nothing group and what happened here right after. I talked about this last week too, but what happened right after everybody got laid off here. Because, I live in Alexandria, Virginia. Most people that are in my neighborhood, et cetera, work for the federal government. Doge came in and decimated all of these jobs that people thought were safe. I mean, these are people, Allison, these aren't entrepreneurs like us. These are people who said, I'm actually going to make less money so that I can have more security because I can never get fired and I'll have a pension and I'll get my student loans paid back. And all I got to do is put in my 20 years. These kind of people. Like, these are not entrepreneurial risk-taking people. And that's what makes up the backbone of our local economy. And so all of these people start getting laid off. And I knew families where it was like the mom and the dad both got laid off. It was awful. Awful, awful, awful. And the neighbors started to come together in this really beautiful way. Things are a little better here in DC now, but at this time last year, it was like every other house was on the market. They were sitting on the market for months. I mean, it was crazy, Allison. I've never seen anything like it here. Like, we all thought if we invested in real estate here, it would always be safe because the government doesn't go to, like, this was supposed to be a certain thing and it turned into something different. I saw my neighbors saying, hey, I made too much for dinner. If anybody's hungry, come over and get the leftovers. And yeah. I'm like, again, I'm going to get teared up. But I saw people coming together in community in a way that almost felt historic or nostalgic, or maybe nostalgic for Oklahoma. I mean, that's how people in Oklahoma are. Again, I grew up where nobody had any money. Everybody's helping each other all the time. If you need to move, you don't call movers. Like your friends come over and they help you move, and maybe you buy a pizza for everybody, right? And that's the culture that I came out of. But I didn't see that a whole bunch in the big city until we fall into our own hardship. It was actually, and I'll say this for the other side for a second, because I don't want to get like so lefty here. It did give me a decent perspective on, hey, this is what the rest of the country has been shouting at us in DC for the last 10 or 20 years. Our communities are failing. We don't have jobs. We're falling into drug addiction. Like, we can't afford groceries. You guys are just the liberal elites living in your bubble. And we were so offended by that and so upset by that. And it's like, I look back on that now and it's like, yeah, I was going out to gourmet restaurants and whatever the whole time that was happening to everybody on Main Street America. And then it comes here and you go, oh, fuck, okay, I see why that sentiment rose and that wave rose. And that was the populist wave that ended up getting Trump elected. Like, I'm not a fan of Trump, and I can appreciate where people were coming from and how that felt and why that happened.
It does feel like that is what real America is about anyway. And so when I think, just my own personal view is that I don't trust our leaders, but I am betting on us to come back together. I feel like there are more people that are reaching out and are saying enough. Obviously the loneliness epidemic is a real thing. But there is more of a movement around communities. Maybe that's reflected in retreats and conferences and workshops and ways to get back in person and to be with each other, for each other again. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Tell me, what is one delusional thing that is so outsized that you can't wait to make true?
Having a delusional chapter in, the 50 biggest cities in America would be amazing. We're going to start here in DC. This is going to be DC homegrown, coming from a place where we've had a really rough year and we need some excitement and some inspiration and some empowerment back at DC. So Delusional is going to be DC grown, starting here in DC, but I would love to get it going to the point where we have a model for people to start chapters in other cities and this thing to really expand.
Let it be known. Let it be true. How would somebody want to start if maybe they're inspired by this conversation and they want to? How would you advise somebody to start being delusional? What is the first step?
I think you have to look at the risk that you're considering and ask yourself, what happens if I do nothing different? Because we always think that, staying right where I am is safe, but staying where you are is an illusion. There's no such thing as that anyway. If you stay static and you do nothing different, life is going to move on without you, and you're going to fall off the conveyor belt one way or another. You're going to be uncomfortable one way or the other. I would rather control my discomfort and run into the fire than just sit here and just wait for discomfort to fall upon me and to happen to me, right? And all of us who just lived through COVID, 6 years ago, know what it's like to have a really uncomfortable situation just kind of fall onto us when we were just minding our own damn business and going about our lives, right?
I think there's some profound gravity in that as well, of the risk of comfort and how comfort in many cases can be the enemy of comfort. Is different, I think, from familiar. Familiar feels safe, but often it can be a giant risk as well. One of the things I wanted to just note for the listener is this happens every single time I talk to you, Michelle, is that when Michelle says things offhand, there is so much wisdom and weight and knowledge and experience in it that, for me, I just want to honor you for that. Makes me rethink your perspective, because the way that you see things, you connect dots that maybe not other people don't, but you connect them in a way that I think is really, really powerful. And so I feel that about your podcast and the episodes that you have of just in conversation. And I'm really, really grateful for this time. Is there anything you would love to share with your audience as we close up this conversation?
Thank you for all of that, Allison. I appreciate it. I've lived hard And I am now benefiting from some of the wisdom and experience that comes with taking all those risks and putting myself in all kinds of crazy situations, some of which I wouldn't do again, but some of which, I would. It's hard won, and so I appreciate that you recognize it. We are building the plane as we are flying it with Delusional. That's the way I love to do everything as an Aries entrepreneur. I am actively looking for people who want to be on the Delusional train with me, having their voices heard, building this with me. This is not like a Michelle is the guru kind of centered thing. This is a collective that I'm putting together. It's a movement. We're going to be building it together. So if you want to join the Delusional movement, you can join it a couple of ways. We have a Delusional movement group going on Facebook. You can come join us in the Delusional movement group there. You can also get on our mailing list so that you can find out about the events that are coming up. Hint, one is coming up very soon in DC. I'm not quite ready to announce it, but it will be announced very soon. Our very first in-person gathering for Delusional. So if you want to know all about that, then go to delusionaluniverse.com and just sign up for the email list, and you'll be the first to know about any of that.
And more than anything, don't sleep on it, right? We got a world to change. Take some action.
Yeah. Come together with other people who want to be empowered and inspired and excited. First thing we're going to do is just create a different vibe so that we can all get into a different headspace. And then we can start to vision together and create something new and something better. So I'm very excited, Allison. I'm very excited for you to be involved in this. And anybody listening that wants to get involved with us, we welcome your participation. Please come hang out with us in the Delusional movement. Get delusional with us. Get your dreams going. Get our dreams going. We're all going to do it together.
Yes. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for letting me interview you on your own podcast.
Thank you for interviewing me on my own podcast. And everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Thank you so much, Allison Hare. Culture Changers podcast, by the way, go check it out. She's been doing it 7 years and she's got some big fucking deal people on there. I'm always impressed with the people that you get on there, Allison, and your work is so cool. So go check out Allison on Culture Changers podcast and come join us in Delusional Movement. And thank you all for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.